Hello, I am very privileged and honoured today because joining us, we have a fantastic guest. This might be a little clue, a multi-million best-selling author. It is, of course, the fantastic David Walliams. David, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm okay. This is really weird, isn't it? All this interfacing stuff.
Yeah, it's not something I'd normally do, but there you go. It's nice. It's nice to connect with people.
It's nice. Well, yeah, connect with people, but not physically. How are you finding lockdown?
Well, I think if you're a writer, you're lucky really because you can get on with writing because it's something you do on your own, and you really do need peace and quiet to do it. But obviously, it's a very hard situation to get your head around, isn't it? Everything that's happening. I'm determined not to complain.
Are you currently penning something then?
I'm just sort of finishing a book. I've also been working on a script of an adaptation of one of my children's books as well, Bad Dad.
Oh wow, exciting!
I've had lots to do, so I've been fine on in that way. But obviously, it is just weird, isn't it? It's weird.
Has it helped you complete things quicker? Because you're like, oh, I can't be distracted by going.
It has, because normally things that get in the way of writing are just other plans you have, and obviously.
Yeah.
Zero plans now, so there's no reason why I don't just write all day, go for my walk, at some point in the afternoon, and then write all evening. And
your government allotted walk.
Yeah, have you been seeing this program or that one? I was like, no, I just kind of write in the evenings. I quite like it because even the evenings it gets really quiet. And so
yeah.
I think as you're a children's writer and you're trying to think up magical ideas, that sort of. When it gets dark, it just, I don't know, there's a different atmosphere, isn't there? And for me, it really feeds my imagination. Especially
because now we're not hearing like cars and planes or any of that stuff. So it kind of feels like a really different vibe, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's just there's so many aspects to it. It's very hard to sort of sum it up. But all I'm concentrating on at the moment is just trying to be in the moment.
Well, it is good news that you've finished another book. That's so exciting. Plus Bad Dad is going to be televisual. But right now I want to talk about this book here, Slime. It's such a brilliant concept, actually. It's all set on an island, just in case you don't know. It's all set on an island, and there's these hilarious characters that are all pretty horrible when it comes to kids. Is it based on any place that you've been to ever, or anywhere? I mean,
No, I just thought, I often think it's good when you're writing a story to have set it in one particular place. Well, it helps me anyway. And so Ireland was quite a good place, I think, because an island is as big or small as you want it to be. I was thinking about those kind of islands you get off the top of Scotland, where there's like 500 people living on them. So have
you ever been to any of those?
No, I haven't. I really want to go, actually.
I've been to Egg. There's like 35 people, and it's a brilliant setting. The first thing I thought when I went there was someone should make a show about this. So yeah, it's also quite appropriate for lockdown, isn't it? Being on an island in a way.
I suppose so, yeah. And I met this boy through the Variety Club charity called Dante Marvin, who was such a little star, and he said, "Can you write a book about a boy in a wheelchair?" And he's in a wheelchair. I said, well, I'll think about it, because people say, can you write a book about this or that? And often it's something like an issue. And then I met him about 3 months, 6 months later. He said, have you written the book yet? And I was like, oh no, I haven't got on with it. And then I thought, actually, I wanted to write a really fun book about a boy in a wheelchair. I just thought, when that's not your own story, I don't know, your first instinct might be to be very sentimental or write a very sad story or something, because you don't understand this situation. You're not living through it. But he is such a fun character. I thought, why don't I just write a really fun book? And he sort of happens to be in a wheelchair, but it's not really the whole, it's not basically the whole
secondary.
And I thought, well, that's how it should be, really, because otherwise it's kind of like an issue book and it's not a fun book. And I like to write fun books. So I was pleased that I could represent a kid in a wheelchair and still make it just a really fun, enjoyable book. And hopefully kids, who are reading it, whoever they are, just see past that and then just enjoy the story and enjoy the character and don't think too much about that.
Okay, now one of the more unusual characters is the character of Slime. How did you come up with Slime? Were you into slime as a child? Where did slime come from?
I love slime. I mean, slime.
Who doesn't?
It used to be a fair bit on children's television when I was growing up. Like people would
Mm,
slime, and that still happens a lot, doesn't it?
yeah.
And it's a weird one. It's like kids love it, and they love that they can kind of put it in a grown-up's face, and grown-ups go, "Oh, I like that." But I thought, well, nobody has really, to my knowledge, no one had really written a famous story about it. I didn't know any stories about it. And so I thought, oh, hang on, this is a super popular thing kids love. Is there a story in it? And the more I thought about it, I thought, oh, it could be like a shape-shifting character. And it means that it empowers a child to do whatever they like. Because now Ned, who's the lead character, who sort of based a bit on Dante, he can take revenge on all these nasty grown-ups on the island where he lives with the help of slime. And slime can become, an aeroplane or a motorbike or musical notes or jelly babies or whatever. And so it was great also just trying to be as imaginative as possible, because when you're writing a children's book, that's one license you've got, isn't it? The only limit is your imagination. You think about the best ones ever written, Alice in Wonderland or Harry Potter or Narnia or something. It's like they're so imaginative.
Mm.
That's what kids often really love about children's books, is that they go to a really imaginative place. So I thought, oh, I've set myself a task here. I've got to try and be as imaginative as possible. And because I wasn't constrained, by reality.
Yeah.
A lot of fun writing it, and the aim is just to write a really fun book that kids will enjoy.
I mean, it is so creative. Your ideas are so brilliant. Do you ever worry that you'll run out of inspiration? I mean, have you ever had writer's block or anything like that?
Sometimes you are thinking, all right, okay, what's next? But I've just been completing my 28th book, so I guess if I had that thought, it would have happened by now. You don't want to repeat yourself. But I mean, I guess there's themes that I'm interested in that probably do come back. But I just want to sort of move forward the whole time and write different types of books. Like this we had a book out last year as well called Fing, F-I-N-G.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like more of a sort of fun, sort of junior book, like
Yes.
maybe skew slightly younger than the other books. And I'm thinking about the Roald Dahl books that I love, because there are ones like Matilda and The Witches that feel like his upper end of children.
Older and darker, yeah.
Things like George's Marvellous Medicine and Fantastic Mr. Fox, and maybe even The Twits that are slightly skewed a little bit younger. So I have been, that's what I was thinking of. I was thinking, well, make something just kind of fun and to be enjoyed by kids from, I don't know, 6 years old upwards.
Have you ever started like a story? Because you said like you met Dante and he gave you a bit of inspiration. You've always loved slime, blah, blah. Have you ever started a story and completely overhauled it like halfway through? Or do you always have it all totally mapped out? Or can it take you on a journey almost?
I've abandoned stories, often relatively early. I've written picture books that I've just completely abandoned.
Really? And I have them.
And decided that actually just weren't right, and then just sort of started again. But sometimes you find you can recycle an idea. Like you have an idea. Like I had this idea about a robot that sort of tickled people that went out of control, and I wrote this picture book about it. But it just wasn't quite, I don't know, it wasn't quite 100%.
It wasn't up to your usual caliber.
I don't know. It wasn't great. But I thought the idea of the robot was good. And so I used that in one of the world's worst children's stories.
It didn't work on its own, but it worked within that context.
Secondary thing in another story. So sometimes you have that. You have a sort of what you think is a good idea, but then you think, I haven't really got a whole story for this character.
Yeah. What about horrible grown-ups? You've got a lot of horrible grown-ups. There's lots of inspiration for horrible grown-ups around. Are any of them based on Simon Cowell?
All of them are based on Simon Cowell. Well, he's actually become a lot nicer in recent years. It's really annoying because
I think it's fatherhood.
His fatherhood. He used to be kind of villain figure, and I rather liked him like that because then I would appear just like sort of, I'd be the good guy next to him who was the evil one. But now he's a big softie, and it's like, oh, it's kind of annoying. Can you go back to being evil? But it's, you know, you can think about real people when you're coming up with stories. Sometimes that helps. I think one thing that helps me when I write is sometimes I think about an actor that might play a role. Like,
Yeah.
for example, when I was writing Mr. Stink, I was working with Sir Michael Gambon, who plays Dumbledore in the Harry Potter film. And even though he didn't end up playing it in the TV version, I was thinking about him when I was writing it, or I was thinking when I was writing Bad Dad, I was thinking about Bob Hoskins, who sadly died about, I don't know, maybe a decade ago. But that sometimes helps me. It just helps me sort of visualize it. Think, oh, what actor could play this role? Even though they're never, in all likelihood, ever going to play it. But it helps me in that way. And sometimes I think about real people or people I've met. But I would say as a writer, you just keep your eyes and ears open. You never know when you might have a good idea. Sometimes it's just watching the TV and you're watching a documentary about something, or there's a funny character on some TV show or something, and you think, oh, maybe I could create a character like that. And by the time you've created the character, normally you've moved so far away from the real person that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Has anyone ever sort of had an inkling that things had run-ins with people based on?
The next book is called The World's Worst Parents, and I've just actually got off a call to my mum, and she was like, oh, it's not based on me, is it? No, it's not actually, because there's like 10 different stories. But
because you snuck some of your teachers in The World's Worst Teachers, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about it. One of the PE teacher, who's the Incredible Bulk, is definitely based on one of my teachers at school. But it's all meant in fun. I don't worry too much about that. I think people know when you're creating comedy.
Well, feel free if you need any young Asian, I'm not young anymore, but anyway, YouTube interviewers or anything like that. I won't be offended.
Really long time. 20 years.
Why, thank you. Shucks, I'm blushing. David, we're out of time. You have been a star as always, and Slime is out there ready to be purchased, and there's some fantastic characters in there. It's a brilliant concept, so get your hands on a copy. Cheers, David.
Thank you, Connie. Lovely talking to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Slime by David Walliams. This story is set on the Isle of Mulch. The little island is home to some big characters. Meet Ned. Ned is a bright and funny boy of 11. Because his legs haven't worked since he was a baby, Ned uses a wheelchair to whiz around Mulch. Jemima is Ned's older sister. Jemima likes nothing more than playing the most horrid tricks on her little brother. Ned's parents. Dad spends all day on his fishing boat out at sea. Mum spends all day at the island's market selling the fish he catches. Sir Walter Rath is the headmaster of Ned's old school, Mulch School for Revolting Children. It is the boys' old school because Sir Walter expelled Ned in one of his notorious volcanic rages. Mr. Lust is the deputy head of Mulch School for Revolting Children. Day and night he lusts after that top job of headmaster. Edmund and Edmund Envy run the only toy shop on the island, named Envy's Emporium. The terrible twins loathe children for the simple crime of being young and send the poor mites fleeing from their shop in floods of tears. Madame Silenzio Sloth is the world's laziest piano teacher. The lady is paid good money to give piano lessons to children. However, all she does is snooze on the sofa as she blows off thunderously. Captain Pride is the island's park keeper. The public park is the ex-army officer's pride and joy, so much so that absolutely no one is ever allowed to set foot inside it, especially not nasty little children who will trample his precious grass. Glenn and Glenda Glutton own the only ice cream van on the island, Glutton's Glacers. That is because they have rammed all their rival ice cream vans off the road. The married couple are thieves who snatch children's pocket money and then speed off without giving them their ice creams. Instead, the evil pair scoff all the ice cream themselves. Aunt Greta Greed is Ned and Jemima's mega-rich auntie. She owns the Isle of Mulch. The grand old lady lives alone in a castle high on a hill that overlooks the entire island. All she has to keep her company are more than 100 cats, all called Tiddles. Gigantic Tiddles is Aunt Greta's heftiest cat. It is the size and weight of a bear and infinitely more fearsome. And last but not least, Slime. Oh yes, Slime is very much alive. It is a creature with powers to change shape or slime into anything and everything. But is Slime a force for good or evil? You must read on. Raj the newsagent does not live on Mulch. That's a shame. I was so looking forward to being in the story. Chapter 1, Mulch. The little Isle of Mulch was home to less than 1,000 people. 999 to be precise. I told you it was less than 1,000. One of these 999 people was a boy named Ned. Ned wasn't short for anything. He was just called Ned. Ned was 11 years old. He'd been born on Mulch and, like most islanders, had never left. To say Ned was just an ordinary boy would be wrong. He wasn't ordinary. He was extraordinary. Ned had been born with legs that didn't work. He couldn't walk at all, so was found a battered old rusty wheelchair and he learned to use it. The boy could often be seen whizzing around the island doing stunts and wheelies to delight his friends. "I got the zoomies!" he would cry as he whizzed past. Home for Ned was a tiny weather-beaten old cottage. The cottage perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the raging sea that surrounded the island. From dawn until dusk, Ned's mother and father were out of the house at work. Dad was a fisherman, so was away at sea all day on his fishing boat. Mum sold the fish Dad caught at the island's market. The only fish you could catch around the Isle of Mulch were called shoefish. They were fish shaped like shoes. They tasted like shoes too. The overriding flavour was foot sweat, but the locals became used to the taste. Disgusting though it was. They had no choice. Needless to say, both Ned's parents absolutely stank of fish, but Ned didn't see or even smell much of them as the pair were always working. Instead, the boy was left home alone with his older sister. Jemima resented Ned deeply. She might have been the older one, but it was her younger brother who got all the attention. The girl wore pretty flowery dresses with huge steel-capped boots, and she wasn't afraid to use them. Ned's aunt owned the Isle of Mulch. She was his mother's much older sister, and her name was Greta Greed. High on a hill overlooking the whole island squatted Kitty Litter Castle, a huge medieval fortress that the lady called home. It was a world away from the tiny cottage that Ned shared with his family. Greed lived there alone, which is how she liked it. Her only company was her 101 cats. These cats were fearsome beasts. She had them to scare nasty little children away. The lady loathed children, especially her poor nephew Ned. Aunt Greta never ever did a thing to help him. For her, children ruined her Isle of Mulch, with their games, their chatter, and worst of all, their stench. Aunt Greta should be the last person to complain about the smell, as she stank of cat pee. Because Aunt Greta owned the entire island, she had power over all those who lived there. The lady rewarded those grown-ups on Mulch who detested children as much as she did. One such man was Sir Walter Rath. He was a nasty old wretch whom Greed had made headmaster of the only school on the island, Mulch School for Revolting Children. The only thing that gave Rath pleasure was expelling children from his school. Like so many others, Ned had suffered that fate. There was one toy shop on the island. Greed had given care of it to twin brothers, Edmund and Edmund Envy. They had named the shop Envy's Emporium, but it was nothing more than a front for terrorising children. Ned had a particularly nasty time when he had last visited. Another resident of Mulch was Madame Slolenzio Sloth. The lady was supposed to be a piano teacher, but she was too lazy to teach children anything. Sloth was a virtuoso of cruelty. Ned had the misfortune of being one of her pupils, and when he dared to complain, all hell broke loose. Captain Pride was an uptight ex-soldier whom Greed had appointed Mulch's park-keeper. The captain ensured no one could ever enjoy the island's only public park. especially not little people like Ned. Ice cream sellers Glenn and Glenda Glutton made sure children never got to enjoy an ice cream ever. The married couple zoomed around the island in their van looking for children to rob. They took their pocket money, then sped off without giving them their ice cream. If the Gluttons had lived anywhere else in the world other than Mulch, they would have been locked up in prison and the key thrown away. However, greed delighted in their scam and ensured the pair were never brought to justice, even when they stole from their own nephew, Ned. So this little island was home to a large number of horrible grown-ups. But there was a child on the island who was probably as bad. Poor Ned was related to her. It was his sister. Oh, I got a feeling things are going to be kicking off on the island of Mulch. That was Slime by David Walliams. A huge thanks to him for chatting to me. It's time to say bye now, but if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and spread the word. See ya.